Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we're going to take a look at a couple of comics that you may want to consider getting graded. Because of where the economy is, because of uncertainty, some folks are keeping their dollars close, but they still want to be involved with the hobby. By taking a look at the books that you already have in your collection and being selective about the ones that you choose to grade, it allows you to do a little bit of both. Have a book that you already love and you enjoy and that you already own, spend a little bit of money, still be involved, and actually see a little bit of an increased return for the money that you are choosing to spend. So what we're going to do with some help from our friends at comicspriceguide.com is to take a look at a few books that you may want to think about. If you have these books in your long boxes or your short boxes, pull them out, take a good look at them, and make a decision on whether you want to send them in to be graded. With that said, let's get to the books. Before we get going, I do want to point out that this video is sponsored by comicspriceguide.com, the world's largest database of comic book values. They have exceeded 1.2 million comics in their database. They also have 1.1 million members on their online platform. If you have not visited comicspriceguide.com yet, I encourage you to do so after you watch this video. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at a handful of examples. What I will remind you of is that I use a cost of about $70 for this analysis. And this is like an all-in cost that includes acquisition cost of the book itself, as well as the grading, the cleaning, the pressing, the shipping. And you can make adjustments on your side depending upon what your actual costs are. But I'd like to use $70 as the line in the sand, because this is about trying to figure out where you actually spend your money wisely so that you don't actually lose money and maybe even increase the overall value of your collection by spending a couple of bucks. So I wanted to make sure that I threw that out there for people to be able to consider. The very first book that we're going to look at is this one that's on screen right now. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 149. This is the first appearance of Ben Reilly, the Spider-Man clone, and is, I think, a pretty good book. Not maybe the best cover out there, but definitely a good book. Of course, Ben Reilly goes on to become the Scarlet Spider a little bit later, but this is where Ben Reilly first appeared. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. And again, keep the value or the line in the sand of $70 in mind as we do this. But one of the great things about comicspriceguide.com is that they give you the values not just for the raw books, but also for graded books as well. And that's what makes this pretty helpful, I think. So as we scroll down the list here, we're looking at this last column of graded value. You can see, of course, if you had a 9.8, you absolutely grade this book. You absolutely spend the money to get this book graded. If you happen to have a 9.8, I didn't look up the census count, but I'm guessing that it's relatively small there. But as you work your way down this last column, you can see the value start to decline, right? So the question would be, where do you draw the line in the sand? You know, I personally think that if I'm at $100, I think that that's a little too close for me, right? I want a little bit of some cushion to adjust for the various fluctuations that could be happening. And one of the fluctuations that I'm speaking of is the fact that the Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly, is in the Miles Morales movie that is incredibly popular right now. So the values that we see here in these columns might be impacted by what is happening out there with these characters. So you might want a little bit more margin or cushion in there because the value might fluctuate downward as we get further away from that movie that was just recently released. So the line, the water, the line in the water might, or is the sand, water, the line you might want to draw for this one might be around the 8.0, right? 8.0, very fine. You can see here that it has a graded value of $170. In my mind, that gives you a little bit of cushion. I get antsy at the 7.5, where you have a value of $115, and the same for the 7.0, where it's like $100. You could see some dips that might put you in a not so great place, right? So I think that the line is around the 8.0, very fine. That's where I potentially would aim. So as you look at your books, you do a dirty grade of them, you really evaluate, can this book get 8.8 I'm sorry, an 8.0 if I send it in to be graded? That is what you are asking yourself. Realistically, can it be that great or higher? If you say yes, this could be a book that you want to send in to be graded because you could reap some benefits, right? Again, if you have a 9.0, $240, that is not bad. That is not bad at all. But as I mentioned, this is the first appearance of Ben Reilly. This is not the first appearance of the Scarlet Spider. So I want to glance at that book and talk a little bit about, where you might want to draw the line if you happen to have that book in your collection. And that book specifically is Web of Spider-Man issue number 118. I have three or four copies of this in my collection. It is a book that I personally have been staring at off and on for a while, trying to figure out whether my books meet the threshold, whether it makes sense for me to actually send these books in. And again, if you look in this last column, you can see that potentially, where you can see where you might want to consider sending this book in to be graded, right? That is an incredibly high price for the 9.8, but as you go down the list, you start to see those values start to dip, right? And again, using the logic that we've spoken about in terms of $70 cost all in, plus, you want to have a little bit of cushion in there. I think potentially where you might want to draw the line is about the 9.4, if not the 9.6. So you're going to have to take a look at your books and you're going to have to ask yourself, realistically, can my book get a 9.4 or better? If you happen to be a Ben Reilly, fan, a Scarlet Spider fan, by all means send it in, right? But in my mind, this is about spending money wisely, where you can recognize an increased benefit to your overall collection by increasing the value of the collection. And again, you might want to draw the line at the 9.4 or the 9.6. 9.6 is not bad at $195, not bad at all. I've stared at my books and I don't think that I'm going to be able to get a 9.8 for them. I don't think that I'll be able to get a 9.8. I think I'm probably going to be 9.4, 9.6 for the various copies. And I don't know if I'm actually going to send them in. To be honest with you, there are other books in my collection that might warrant grading, where this one might not. So again, it's important to, I think, to look at the data and to make informed decisions about how you are spending your money. It is very difficult to get money, but it is very easy to spend and waste money. In a recent video, I spoke a little bit about Gwen Stacy and Edge of Spider-Verse, where the variant, if you will, of Gwen appeared. I put it out there that potentially there's a better option than Edge of Spider-Verse issue number 1, and that better option could be Amazing Spider-Man issue number 31, which is the first appearance of the OG, the original Gwen Stacy, as well as Harry Osborn, etc. So not the best cover. I personally do not like this cover, and I never have, and I potentially never will like this cover. But again, it is a good book. And as you look at the two columns, both left and right, both raw and graded, and you work your way down the list, generally speaking, there is no bad place to be with this book. There is no bad place to be with this book. If you have a raw copy, it's still worth $34 at a 0.5, right? If you have this book at a 0.5 and you paid not a whole lot of money for it, you could realistically send this book in and still have it be worth something. You can see here that according to comicspriceguide.com, they have the 0.5 at $170. This is a low number Amazing Spider-Man first volume comic. It is a double key of two important characters and the Spider-Man universe. Again, I don't think that you can go wrong with this book. If you keep it raw, perfectly fine. If you want to send it in graded and get it graded, I don't think that would be a bad move for you either. ASM 31, fantastic book. Not so good cover. There's another book that I wanted to, well, actually two more. We're going to look at a couple more here. This next one is just a fantastic book. It is attached to a movie that is going to be dropping this month. It is Transformers issue number 1. Again, I don't think that you can go wrong with this book. If you happen to be a fan of the Transformers, of cartoons from the 80s, of Bill Sienkiewicz, You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. It is just a cool book no matter what. The question is, do you send this book in to be graded? Do you make that investment? I think that you can. I think that you can. Again, this book is the first appearance of a lot of the Transformers, whether they be the Decepticons or the Autobots. Really, really good book. So let's take a look at this. And again, if you look at this last column, you may again stick with the theme right here. Where you may want to draw the line for this book is at a 9.0, because at a 9.0, very fine to near mint, this book has a value of $150. That gives you the cushion. It gives you the cushion of, is this book, inflated right now because of the movie dropping? And what would happen if we move away from the movie? Will it drop? More than likely it will, because every book does, but you might still be in a really good place versus if you went with the 8.5, which has a value right now of $110. If that thing starts to drop down, again, your cost might be $70. Again, for this exercise, that's where we draw the line. Again, everyone's a little different. So you don't substitute my judgment for your own. You're going to have to look at this. You're going to have to look at your book. You're going to have to make an informed decision. But again, if you have a 9.8, if you are up here, if you pull out your copy and your copy is flawless, if it is gorgeous, sharp corners, no spine ticks, creases, any Cheetos, none of that stuff, get after it. Get after it, because that is a gorgeous book. I took a quick glance at the newsstand, and I think that what we just outlined here of a 9.0 or better for the direct edition, I do believe also holds true for the newsstand. But again, take a moment, visit comicspriceguide.com, do a little bit of research, make an informed decision. But I believe that that is true. So looking at one last book, and this one also is attached to the Miles Morales book, but it's attached to something else. It is attached to the possibility that Sony, which owns the Spider-Man universe, may be coming out with a Spider-Woman movie. We don't know which Spider-Woman person they will use, because there are several. But I wanted to take a quick glance at this one. Marvel Spotlight issue number 32, the first appearance and origin of the Spider-Woman, also known as Jessica Drew. A really good book. I have it in the collection. I picked mine up graded several years ago for, I think, a fair price, but a really cool book. There's no doubt about that. Let's take a look at this in the last column again as we work our way down the list for this one. You may want to draw the line in the sand for this one at the 8.0. And I say that because as I looked at some of what was happening with the lower grades, the 7.5, the 7.0, I saw some softness and in the values of those, the swings in terms of value were a little too broad for me, specifically with those grades with this book. And so I personally would draw the line a little bit higher for this one at an 8.0, very fine. That I think might make a little more sense. But again, do not substitute my judgment for your own. If you have this book, do a real evaluation of the potential grade of this book before sending it in. Because again, you could see some softness if you happen to be off in your grading. If you don't know how to dirty grade, there's videos here on the channel that take a look at that concept. Just search on YouTube for Regie Collects Dirty Grading, and that will actually help you find a video or two that will lead you down a very good path. All right. So with that said, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you found it informative, entertaining, whatever it might be. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's just put it that way. And if you did, I want to encourage you to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I want to invite you to do that now. Go ahead, subscribe, turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content that comes out from the channel. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do that. You can do it on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yeah. Should you practice art or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master, the one that's more than a rapper, the one that's an educator, the one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts, he's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan, straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations, synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting, Indian style in the gold.